Hey folks, this is Kalani. One of the questions which comes up every time an expansion is just around the corner is, will we get a new race or will we get a new class? For the longest time it was one of these two choices. Burning Crusade gave us 2 new races, Wrath of the Lich King gave us our first hero class, Cataclysm gave us 2 new races again, and Mists of Pandaria just had to spoil us with a new class and a new race with the monks in the Pandaren. I guess we paid for that in Warlords of Draenor, where we didn't get any new races or any new classes, but I guess most of the races were updated, so we'll maybe let them off. Legion has got us back into the swing of things by introducing a new class with the Demon Hunters, so we should be expecting something to do with races for the next expansion, right? I bet no one thought that we'd be getting 6 new playable races. That's pretty crazy considering the most we've ever gotten at once was 2. So we'll be getting 6 new races that are going to be playable in the Battle for Azeroth expansion. They are the Lifeforce Ji, the Void Elves and the Dark Iron Dwarfs for Alliance, the High Mountain Torrent, the Knightborn and the Zandalari Trolls for Horde. How's that for variety? Now, some of you might argue that these aren't new races because we've seen them all before and they're not even separate races. They're more like sub-races. I would agree, they are more like sub-races and I have absolutely no problem with that. Maybe I'd give you a little bit of leeway to complain about them being sub-races if only 1 or 2 were introduced for the next expansion. But we're getting 6. We're going from 13 races at character creation to 19. That's a huge leap. I can imagine we'll see a whole lot more variety in the characters we see running around in the world. These sub-races also introduce a whole new set of customization for character creation. They're going to have so many fun little bits and bobs to play around with and change, like the Lifeforce Ji having light symbols all over their bodies, and I bet Void Elves will be able to change those void wings that they get, or change how their void form looks. High Mountain Torrent get those awesome moose antlers, Dark Iron Dwarves can play about with fire and flame effects in their hair and beards, and adding in more customization like this, even if it's through introducing a new race, is only a good thing for the game. It's also bringing light to some of the gaps that our current character creation and customization has. Going forward, we can expect more options to be added for all of our current races. Some of the most important or most impactful additions that we already know about are being able to choose a straight-backed orc and maybe even straight-backed trolls. That's something we've been asking for quite a while now and isn't as easy as some other customization options. Imagine how easy it will be to introduce new hairstyles, skin tones or facial features. The best part is that the allied race system is fully open-ended. Any sub-race you can think of can be added as an allied race now that this system is going to be in place. Adding in more and more races is going to be that much easier going forward. So, can we make these races as soon as Battle for Azeroth launches? Well, not exactly. There's a few hoops we're going to have to jump through before you can make any of these allied races for yourselves, but I actually love how this is being implemented. Throughout our journeys in the new expansion, we'll meet all of these races and try to recruit them for our factions. Major questlines will take us through the story of each allied race and explain why they're joining up with the Horde or the Alliance. You'll need to work your way through those questlines and recruit an allied race before you'll be able to make them as characters, so you'll need to go through all of the Knightborn quests and bring them into the Horde to be able to make and play Knightborn characters. You will have to explore the story of the new Void Elves and why they are seeking shelter in the Alliance before you can create a Void Elf for yourself. I really like that we're going to be exposed to the story of these races so we know what it means to play a Zandalari Troll or a Dark Iron Dwarf. So after you unlock the allied race you can create them as a playable character, or you can race change to them if you would prefer. It's worth noting that the allied races start at level 20, so you do skip all of the introductory quests and starting areas of the other races. You can head on over to Stormwind or Orgrimmar and start your adventure in a variety of ways thanks to the changes to leveling and the world scaling being applied to most of the game. It makes perfect sense to skip over the starting areas as these new races because they wouldn't really fit in with the starting areas we already have, and creating new starting locations and quests is a huge ordeal. If you can add a race without having to create a starting area, that makes it so much easier to add races to the game, and one of the main reasons I think the devs were able to add 6 new races all at once. We already know a bit about the race we're creating and the situation they're currently in because we have to play through all of that before we were even able to create the race. It's a really elegant way of addressing any problems we might have had with introducing new playable races on this scale. We also get to skip those pesky first 20 levels. We can go straight into dungeons, huzzah! Now, if you're in that camp of folks who will want to swap their race as soon as they are able to, it's worth mentioning that if you level up one of these allied races from their starting level of 20 all the way up to 110, you will be awarded with a unique heritage armor set. These armor sets are specific to the allied race and can be transmogged across any armor type. That means you can use the same look for cloth, leather, mail, and plate, but only for that allied race. You can't unlock these armor sets and use it on any other race, so no Knightborn gear on your Blood Elf, etc, etc. These sets look pretty fantastic and do an awesome job of getting a specific race's aesthetic across, so if you want to play one of these races and use their awesome heritage gear, you're going to have to do things the hard way and level up all the way from level 20. Each race also has new racial abilities, but we don't have a lot of information on them just yet. So let's have a look at these races in a bit more detail. The Lifeforce Ji were a part of the Army of Light. They went through a ritual which infused their bodies with the very essence of the Holy Light. There's a few new customization options to do with their skin textures, horns, and the general look of the Draenei, as well as having light touch tattoos across their bodies. The glowing rune on their forehead can also be customized. After our victory on Argus, the Lifeforce Ji decided to help protect Azeroth against any rising threats that would do us harm, as well as join the Alliance to help push back against Horde aggression. The Lifeforce Ji can be hunters, mages, paladins, priests, and warriors. Not a great selection for the Lifeforce Ji, but all of those classes do make sense. I guess a Shadow Priest might be a bit funky with their whole light obsession, but oh well. The Lifeforce Ji racial abilities are one of the ones we do have information about. They get Light's Judgment, which is pretty much the same thing as our Light's Judgment ability on Argus. Call down a strike of holy energy, dealing damage to enemies within 5 yards. That's scary that they basically still command the Vindicar, but their second racial is Forge of Light. They can summon a blacksmithing anvil wherever they want. So if you're a blacksmith, go Lifeforce Ji. They also have some passives. Experience gain from killing beasts is increased by 20%. Final Verdict deals damage to enemies and heals any allies within 8 yards of you when you die, and Holy Resistance decreases the damage that you take from holy spells by 1%. Quite holy focused, as you would expect. On the other side of the holy spectrum, we have the Void Elves. Now you might be thinking that they look like Blood Elves. And you would be right. These elves are Blood Elves who were tampering with the powers of the Void and were subsequently kicked out of the Horde. Seeing as Illyria is one of the few mortals who has managed to control the Void while resisting its overwhelming corruption, she takes in these Blood Elves and trains them not to go crazy. These elves are the Void Elves, and Illyria brings them into the Alliance. I swear Blood Elves just never learn about dabbling in powers better left alone, but I'm even more surprised that the Horde didn't try to keep that power for themselves, though I guess they might not have anyone to train them. Void Elves can be hunters, mages, monks, priests, rogues, warlocks, and warriors, so if you really want to roleplay as Illyria, I guess you're going to have to be a Void Elf hunter. They have quite a selection of classes there, only a few missing, and it's the ones that, again, make sense. We don't have any information about the Void Elves' racial abilities, but we do know they will have a Void form which they can shift in and out of. We're not sure how exactly that's going to work just yet either, so we'll have to wait and see. The last Alliance race joining the fold is the Dark Iron Dwarves, who we know very little about. We're not entirely sure why they're going to be useful going into the battle for Azeroth, but we know that they will have some presence in Kul Tiras. It's interesting that we have a dwarf race in Kul Tiras instead of a different faction of humans, but I wonder if the dev team felt Dark Iron Dwarves were more interesting when compared to Kul Tiras humans. I can definitely see the Dark Iron Dwarves being more fun to work on and include in the allied race system when compared to another set of humans who might not have as many differences to work on. I would imagine the Dark Iron Dwarf racials would be somewhat similar to the Dwarf racials, maybe a different version of Stone Skin, and the ability to use their beards as a forge to smelt metals, or maybe even a cooking fire. On the Horde side we have the High Mountain Torrent, who we already know quite a bit about. They are descended from Huln High Mountain, the brave hero of the War of the Ancients, and after uniting the tribes of High Mountain they proved to be useful allies against the Legion. But that threat is now dealt with, and they can stand strong with their fellow Tauren from Kalimdor. Joining the Horde is really a no-brainer for this race. They're basically Tauren but with cooler looking horns. It's sort of interesting that the Alliance worked together with the High Mountain Tauren through Legion, but that exalted reputation with the High Mountain isn't going to save you from being skewered in Warfronts or the Island expeditions. The High Mountain Torrent can be warriors, hunters, shamans, monks, and druids. Their racial abilities look pretty awesome so far. They have Bull Rush, which lets you charge forward and knock down all enemies for 1.5 seconds, which might not seem all that powerful, but that's one hell of an AoE interrupt. Pair that with the Blood Elf Arcane Torrent Silence and you got a delicious recipe for Mythic Plus dungeons. They also gain plus 15 to their mining skill and can always mine faster. They get 1% versatility as a passive, they can take 330 reduced damage at all times, and they also have a chance to loot more meat and fish. That's a lot of racials which all seem pretty useful in one way or another. If you want to be a tank or fish all expansion, it's time to reroll High Mountain. We also have the Knightborn going to the Horde side, which might surprise a few people, but honestly the Knightborn story is almost a copy-paste of the Blood Elf story. They were addicted to a font of magical power and need to find some other way to sustain themselves. So if they have the same problems as the Blood Elves, where better to get help and assistance than the Blood Elves themselves? Joining the Horde also gives them a chance to explore the rest of the world and fight for honour and glory. The Knightborn can be hunters, mages, monks, priests, rogues, warlocks, and warriors. So if you're wanting to rock that sweet Knightborn armor, you're going to be limited to those classes, which aren't all that limiting. There's a good amount of options there. Sadly, we don't have any solid information about the Knightborn racial abilities, but there has to be something in there about illusions. I don't think Blizzard would miss such an obvious chance at trolling us. Maybe they can semi-stealth by stealing appearances and using illusions, or something fun like that. The last race to be brought into the Horde is the Zandalari Trolls, which doesn't really need an explanation. They're the main new race of the expansion on the Horde side, and they're also a race we've been asking for a long time. Ever since they were first introduced, they've been an interesting group of trolls, and that hit a new peak in Mists of Pandaria when they turned up with a bunch of dinosaurs. Sadly, we don't have too much information about the Zandalari Trolls, except they're in trouble over on the continent of Zaldalar, and we're going to have to help them clean up a few messes before we can run around as Dino Trolls. While we don't know for sure how many classes will be playable as Zandalari Trolls, I think it's safe to say most of the current troll classes should be available. We do know that they can be druids, and their travel form will indeed be a raptor, so that's really exciting. As for the racial abilities, I'm not sure how crazy Blizzard will go with these, but I'm super excited to see what they can come up with. The racials we have information on make me think they're going back to making racial abilities actually matter somewhat. Both the Lifeforce Ji and the High Mountain Torrent have quite a few passive effects, as well as an active ability, so I would expect every new allied race to have a similar number of racials. The best part of this feature is what we could see in the future. Any race we come across could be included into the allied races. That new Volpera race could be in there by the end of the battle for Azeroth, and any races we encounter after this expansion could be candidates as well. We could quickly double our number of races available for play, which is pretty crazy. I wonder if we'll get to the point where people feel like we have too many choices, but for now I think more choices can only be a good thing. I'm really torn between playing a Zandalari Troll or a Knightborn though. Standing up straight is a huge change for trolls. I might have been playing one all this time if they could already stand up straight. The Knightborn armor sets look so cool though, they're really one of the prettiest races we've seen in a long time. Choices, choices. How about you? Do you have a race that you're absolutely dying to play? Leave all your thoughts and theories in the comments section below. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave, and if you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.